Good afternoon, all. CamelbackTrading.org coming to you this Friday afternoon, March 18th, and we are looking at Window Traders Market Profile, SPY IWM, and Triple Qs. We will be going all over all three of these indices charts. A lot has changed. The bulls are wrestling back control. Tremendous finish to the week. Feels really good to see the market and call it, especially come after Wednesday afternoon when the market rallied. We said the market would need some digestion late Wednesday afternoon and get its direction. Then on Thursday, which it certainly did, we're up just about $24 and change on the week, almost $25 on the week. Excellent day today. We nailed them late in the day as we saw that the market makers were going to have a big issue on their hand. We'll go over that. When the market refused to pull back and the more and more calls that were being bought, the market makers were finding themselves in trouble because if there was no pullback, they were selling the calls to the people who were buying them. They were going to have to buy the underlying. And they ended up having to do that, and I took very nice advantage of it in K period, which I'll go over in a minute. But first we started the day. Now remember, we had the dividend today, so ES was ahead of us. So when ES was taking out yesterday's high and things of that nature, we were a little behind them. But even with the dividend, this market only got into the middle distribution. Remember, we've had two triple distribution days in a row. That's pretty powerful, right? You had it yesterday, you have it again today. We filled one set of single prints because of the dividend today. We didn't fill the second one. Triple Qs. ES never filled either. So they have both sets of single prints in the triple distribution day from Thursday. Okay? And today. That's powerful. Qs, they blew through a 4-week balance high. Russell didn't get to theirs. They missed it by $1.50. Russell goes out with a price probe, but they do not have any trend day from today. Remember, they had one yesterday. As opposed to Triple Qs, didn't have any yesterday. Actually, they did. Did they fill it? No, they didn't fill it. Triple Qs had a double distribution. They did not fill it. They held theirs, and they go out with a price probe. We all probed. Qs go out triple X distribution, L, and they have a very small one in G. Russell doesn't have any today. Another thing that, and again, it might be long, but I think it's important. A lot of people ask me, and I'll show you on the chart, why did the market have so much trouble getting through the 20-day moving average and blew through the 50? And here's the explanation. We were below the 20 for 19-20 days because we were in a huge $30 balance. Once we came out of that weekly balance to the upside, well, guess what? It totally coincided with the 50-day moving average. So once we got accepted above it, we exploded. So there's your answer to that. As far as my trade said, I didn't do anything in A. I said, I got to see what we want to do after the dividend. But once B took out A's high and started getting back into the price probe from yesterday, I started buying longs 439s. So I scalped longs 439s. I had a small one. Again, when C started, I said, if we take out B's low, I'm out. So when that happened, took it off. Now, they didn't get much, but I honored what I said I was going to do. I got out, lost small on the trade. Then we did nothing. D, E. I mean, it was painful. So in F period, when we popped E, I was like, I'm going to take a small short until they prove they want to go trend. Well, what happened? They started going. In fact, I was only trying to take a 5 lot, and I double clicked, so I ended up buying 10 puts. Not a big deal. What I did do, when G went up and came back in, I took the 10 puts off for a loss and bought 30 calls. So I bought 30 of the 440, I think it was the 442 calls at that time. Yep, 442 calls. I was like, I don't mind doing that. Went back up, took them off, and had a nice trade on it. So even though I lost 2 trades in a row, small in B, small in F, between the other long I had in B and the long I took in H, was very nice. And then K period. I'm like, we're sitting here. I didn't know. I was like, you know what? They didn't alleviate a lot. Now, on a day that's like not an expiration, I'm like, well, if they don't get going, you couldn't flush out, even though we had the one set of singles. But the more they stayed up here, and the more I knew it was an expiration, you knew the market makers were getting more and more worried that they're going to have to stop buying the underlying. So I bought 30 of the 445 calls at 8 cents in K. Well, they went from 8 cents to 60 cents. And I basically peeled one off at 15, one off at 25, two off at 30. Then from 40 to 60 sold more. I had 10 left. I thought we'd get higher. I sold 2 basically at the height of day. Came back in, sold the rest at 30. Had a very nice, it's a great trade to end the week. So, again, I generally don't do that, but you can sense they were getting trapped, and that's why I did it. Now, as far as destinations for next week, our next 2 destinations on the upside are weekly highs with the 200-day moving average in between. 444.86, today's high is a weekly high. Then 448.06, weekly high. 448.67, afternoon rally high from February 11th. And then there's nothing until 451.61 daily high. And that's all I'm going to give you. There's a lot of other highs in the 450s, but we'll hold off on that. For the downside, price probe again today. L's high, 444.23. Single prints, M's low to K's high, 443.66 to 442.69. That's a decent set. 441.48, afternoon pullback low in J. Second set of singles, 441.20 to 01. H is low to F's high. And then today's low of 437.22. So again, just like this is a triple distribution day, you have to treat it. So is today. Buyers have really, really gone strong. Now, let's go to the charts. And remember one other thing before we get to the charts. I said yesterday in last night's video, this balance high is going to be incredibly important. I said if it fails, we're going to get a $20 move one way or the other. I still believe that. Now, since we took it out to the upside, I would expect to get somewhere minimum between the 455, 460 level. And I'll show you why on the charts. First, we're going to start with Russell. Russell's monthly is still down to balance. They look below last month's low literally by 17 cents. I can't tell you how important that is. Do you realize since that low, we'll round it out, 188. They've rallied $19 already. Now it's still inside of last month's range with 2 weeks to go. If we take out last month's high at some point, you could basically treat it as an inside month, plus look below and fail, and then look, their next real level is up in the 220s. So even though it's down to balance, there's a light at the end of the tunnel for these long-term buyers. What's the key level? 209.05. That's last month's high. And just as importantly, look at this. It's an 8-week balance high. So if Russell can get above that the way we did in ES and the way NQ did today, they can get some legs. Okay? But first things first, they have to get above 209.05. So the monthly is down to balance. The weekly is still pure balance for 8 weeks. Remember, the longer you're in it, the more energy it should have coming out of it to the up or downside. And the daily is clearly up. So, pretty good. They got above the 20 and the 50. Now, let's go to triple Qs. Triple Qs monthly, still down, right? They took out last month's low. Not by a lot, but they took it out. So the monthly's down. Was that a look below and fail? I would have to look to see how many days we spent there or whatever. It might have been, again, we tested bad territory how many times and came out of it. We'll look on the daily. But last month's low is 318.26. We're down. I guess you'd call it down to balance. I'll still call it down. They're going to prove it to me. Weekly. Coming into this week, it was a 3-week balance. This week made it a 4-week balance until today. They got above it. The weekly high was 350.04. So I'm going up in the weekly now. Okay? And, I forgot to point that out. I apologize. Outside week up. We closed above last week's high by $13 after taking out last week's low. Let's go back to Russell. I totally forgot. They took out last week's low and they closed above last week's high by $5.50. But they're still balanced. So maybe that outside week up will give them the energy to get above their balance high next week. For Qs, they're up already in the weekly. Their next destination is 357. So the monthly's down, weekly is up, the daily is up. But now let's see. What was last month's low again? Because that's important to me. How many times did we get below it? 318.26. So we got below it only one day? Yup. So this is technically, again, I wasn't looking at it that closely on the 14th. Actually, I'm going to go to the 30-minute chart. Let's see how long we spent below there. So here's the 14th. How much time did we spend below 317.86 on that day? There's one time frame. 2, 3, 4. So we did spend 4 time frames below there. So to me, that's not a true look below and fail on the daily. But on a monthly chart, maybe you could consider it that. So monthly is down, weekly is up with an outside week up, and the daily is clearly up. And then let's go to SPY and ES. Now, I'm still calling the monthly down, even though it's an inside month. At the end of this month, I'll probably go, or you know what, I'm going to say down to balance, because we do have the inside month. Down to balance. We'll see the rest of the month what it brings us. Weekly. 3-week balance coming into this week. It was a 4-week balance until this afternoon. Boom, explode above it. Weekly is now up in SPY and ES. And that's even with the dividend. And the daily, clearly up. One time framing up 4 days. Remember that trend line? We finally have made a higher high since our all-time highs. That's important. Finally. So that's why there's not a lot of stepping stones in the way. We have the 2 weekly highs above us, this week's high and this week's high. But above that, remember all those daily and weekly highs that were close to each other? Look at this triple top. I wouldn't doubt we go and test that at some point. And that's why I'm saying 455, 460 eventually to see what happens up there. I'm not saying we're going to all-time highs. Not by any stretch. But I am saying I think we could go test this level. Turned out to be, I had a horrible day on Monday, and I was wrong for 5 time frames calling that market. I was a day early on that, but it doesn't matter. I still saw the market well. We moved on, had a good rest of the week. We had an excellent week in our trading room as far as the informing and educating went on. I really appreciate your likes and subscribing. Your references get me people on both YouTube and in my room. I appreciate it. Come check us out at camelbacktrading.org. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll speak prior to the opening on Monday.